Oh, man. After all this time, how can we still be out of chips? I mean, it's obvious everybody is craving chips. Otherwise, we'd have some. Man, we got the munchies. We need to get our fix. These chip makers know that. So why don't they just make more? And what about you? Maybe you have that favorite go-to flavor. But what you have isn't new anymore. What you do have is all beat up and wrinkled on the outside, just bits and pieces of what it once was. Every time you open it, it's old and stale, just smells nasty. Ain't nobody got time for that. You need something fresh. Maybe you've been seeing all the commercials for the latest, greatest, newest flavor. Everybody's talking about it. The reviews are glowing. You're excited. Can't wait to get your hands on one. Yet every time you try, the shelves are bare. So what can you do? Well, luckily, the W-K Burnouts know a few things about what to do because it's what we deal with every day. Over the course of the next few episodes, we hope to share our insights and give you some different options to consider. Maybe the stuff that you already know and just let it slip your mind. Maybe this will be the first time you've even heard of this stuff. Regardless, we hope to answer your burning questions on these topics, as well as my personal flaming hot question. But why would the other two burnouts select the fat burnout to do a snack food analogy when our first video topic is discussing the shortage of the semiconductor chips? And I know I'd kind of like to know. But listen, we've got a lot of information to cover, so it's time to get this show on the road. Hop on in, take a few hits off the information we pass around, because everybody knows the burnouts always have the good stuff. Time to mash the gas, and let's smoke it.
To the W-K Burnouts studio with Christina, Dustin, and then Alan is behind the camera for good reason. So, Dustin, today we are going to talk about the little pesky semiconductor chips. Tell us.
Yeah. So semiconductor chips, what are they? Well, we looked this up, and turns out a semiconductor chip is really, really small. It includes a bunch of electronic components like transistors, right? And transistors are little bitty switches. Basically, there's billions of these transistors on every single chip. And the transistors are smaller than that, like 10,000 times smaller than a human hair. This is microscopic stuff. Mm-hmm. So you take that, put a bunch of transistors, one chip's about the size of a fingernail or a thumbnail, something like that. But it has a lot of electronic components on it, all at a microscopic scale.
Right. And, the chips think of them as the brain of your communication device. Mm-hmm. So, and these I mean, even in your pocket, your credit, your debit cards, your phone that you're holding in your hand, to complex communication devices and healthcare industry and the military, and then obviously in the automotive world.
Yeah. Yeah. So a big question is, how are they made and how are they shipped? You know, what's with this process? So they're produced in really specialized factories called foundries. And these aren't just like I know foundry kind of makes you think of like a, you know, I don't know, glass factory or something where it's just a bit. No, this isn't like regular factories at all.
Mm-hmm.
Even though regular factories have really high standards of stuff, this is like something out of a movie, right? Clean rooms, not just like 2 furnace filters stuck in there. We're talking about like high level filtration and high level build. So these things are really complex factories, the foundries are, and they take a whole bunch of money and time to put together. You can't just pop one up overnight like, you know, a storage shed or something. It's a really involved process.
Yeah, I mean, foundries take years to produce, to make. And Intel had just released that they are planning to build a $19 billion foundry.
It's a lot.
Yeah, in Germany. So, you know, once these chips are manufactured, like they are led and, you know, built through, and it takes a timely process. And they are mostly built in Asia. So, you know, once they are built and they get sent over and packaged and shipped, they still have to go through a pretty good custom process and the clearance where you go through the whatever customs
and all that stuff. Well, the good example of this, something that it's hard to wrap our heads around. Asia has 48 different countries in it. In comparison, Europe's got 44 countries, and you could fit 30 of those European countries inside the U.S. one country. So we're really big and spread out. You can go coast to coast here and not have to go through customs, have to go through borders and stuff like that. So there's just a lot involved with stuff manufactured overseas that we don't even, you know, relate with here because we got such a big country. But there, I mean, just to get from one step to the other is a long process, pretty tedious.
Right. And you know, when they get consolidated and packaged to move forward, there's tier 1 and there's tier 2 suppliers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they get moved across, and it can take, it's like we said, it's a tedious time process, and it can take up to 6 months for a chip to make it through its process.
Yeah. So we're talking about chips. What does this have to do with automobiles, right? Well, there's a lot of these things in our automobiles. I mean, they're used for everything. You think back, my 78 Chevy pickup, you know, it doesn't have, microchips in it. It has large things on the firewall that basically are the resistors, you know, for all the electronics, all 6 of them. There's a lot more stuff than that in like modern automobiles, you know, lots and lots of stuff. We're talking hundreds of distinct modules, each module containing hundreds to thousands of chips, right? So if you got hundreds of modules controlling everything from the rear defrost to the radar cruise control to whatever, and then you have thousands of chips in each one of those modules, that's a tall order for any modern automobile. And electric vehicles can be twice as many. So, I mean, that's even more electronically controlled stuff. So inherently more chips needed.
Absolutely. And, you know, due to the consumer demand, modern vehicles are using a little, you know, more chips with their high, you know, infotainment system and their security features. Yeah, so, you know, it's not where you can get a base model vehicle with crank windows. And unlock, and, you know, you lift the thing to push and, you know, down. You don't have that anymore. And so therefore that type of base model vehicles, trim levels take a lot of chips, you know, to use as well. So it's really up to the demand for those type of technologies.
Yeah. And I remember several years ago, what was it? Toyota started making it so that even like base model stuff would have radar cruise control, would have side blind zone alert. All the other, most of the manufacturers do that now as standard equipment on base stuff. So nothing's really base anymore. If it's available for retail sale, it's got a lot of stuff on it, and also takes thousands and thousands of chips.
Right. Yep.
So this kind of led us to something else in our research. We kind of feel like the automotive industry is pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Well, not in the chip market. I mean, the automotive manufacturers all together make up about 5 to 10% of the business for these chip manufacturers.
That's crazy.
That's like super small potatoes, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, telecom companies, do, 30, 35%, consumer electronics is everything else. I mean, it's automotive manufacturers are pretty small potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I mean, what happened basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the automotive manufacturers, they work on a just-in-time business model, right? That makes it so that in their warehouses, they've got enough for right now demand, like supplies, modules, stuff like that for right now or in the very near future. Like they don't plan out, we're going to make Malibus for 5 years. Well, let's go ahead and get enough chips to make Malibus for the next 5 years. No, we got it for like the next 5 weeks, maybe. That leaves more working capital on the table, healthier company overall, less invested in stuff that they're not technically positive they're going to need. But I mean, it's just a business practice that they've kind of found some holes in through all this stuff. I mean, the pandemic forced shutdowns of many of the manufacturing plants, right? So they shut down. If you're on just-in-time business model and you're going to shut down for a few months because demand is low because everybody's staying home, you're not going to order more chips. You're going to cancel your orders for your chips. When you're already a small potato and you cancel your order, you see what that leads to next, right?
Yeah, and and more people with the pandemic, more people were staying at home, but yet still,
especially first, yeah,
but still, they were figuring it out how school was going to happen, and how you were still able to get things done at work. So, due to being able to access Zoom meetings and your schooling for your students, the demand in the consumer electronics went through the roof. Yeah. So therefore that, takes us into, we lost our place in line.
Oh, big time. I mean, very, very much so. I mean, so much so that, that
people were selling their vehicles. We weren't traveling anymore.
Rental car companies were selling their whole fleets.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff like that.
So it was just people. And then they would, people had this extra money because they were staying at home. And then, so they were buying more home electronics, your TVs, your home entertainment systems and so forth. So therefore nobody was traveling. So they had to spend it somewhere. And then the stimulus checks come along, so.
And then they're like, wait.
Yeah.
They can't tell us not to get in the car and drive.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
We got to get out of this house. Even with the new home theater and 15 Alexas and 7 robot vacuum cleaners, we got to get out of this house.
Yeah,
we can't go anywhere. Nowhere's open. You can't go to ball games. You can't go to, there's so much stuff was shut down at first and, still is. I mean, we got to think about other people. There's still stuff that's shut off completely.
Yeah.
But they couldn't keep you from getting in your car and sightseeing.
Yep.
Or going somewhere.
Yep.
So that kind of flipped everything over way quicker than anybody expected.
Yep.
Right. There's no crystal ball at General Motors or Toyota where they're like, well, we know this is going to happen. Orders were canceled, right? Can't get your place back in line.
Yep.
But what happened? Demand went through the roof.
Yep.
People wanted the cars then. They had stimulus money. They had a lot more expendable income because trips weren't happening. Think about all that money people saved up to go on a cruise.
Oh, yeah,
exactly. We know lots of people that had like huge Mediterranean cruises planned all 2020, 2021.
Yep.
No, none of those happened. They had like $7-8 grand in their pocket. What can you spend that on, right? So, I mean, they ended up in
tiered vehicles. So
let's move on up to a new vehicle.
Yep. A Denali package.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Couldn't afford it before, but now here we are.
But you couldn't get one because, the automakers, they placed their new orders.
Yep.
They didn't get their place back in line.
Nope.
They also use legacy chips in automobiles, right? It's, think about the testing. My iPhone doesn't work if it's got it in my pocket on a 100-degree day and I'm working or doing something, it overheats, right?
Yep.
It's too cold. The screen won't work. That's new chip type of technology. in a way of thinking. So the legacy chips are things that have been more thoroughly tested. The automaker knows that it's going to work right in any environment. They don't just make cars that they sell to, Alaska and some that they sell to, deathbed. They do all of it. So it has to be able to run the full gamut. So they use legacy chips. And those are pretty low on the list of things that the manufacturers want to make. They're not inclined to invest any more money or increase production for 5 to 10% of their actual, customer base in their markets. So kind of ended up in a spot with that as automakers were just at the bottom of the list.
Right. Automakers had to deal with the struggle of, their multiple lower tier suppliers who, also had the effects of the COVID shutdown, because of their locals. So, and that just put us behind more. So that's something that, people don't always think about. They think, oh, yeah, so-and-so's back in business, all these vehicles should be rolling through these chips should be rolling through the assembly line. Well, then you still have your locals, that are causing the effects feeling the effects from the COVID shutdown as well still.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff with the suppliers that comes in. The automotive manufacturer doesn't make everything themselves. They get the bolts from one place. They get the nuts from here, modules from here, stuff like that. Well, so we know automobiles take a lot of electronic components, a lot of chips, right? And we know that we lost our place in line. We're small potatoes to the chip manufacturers anyhow. One of the biggest manufacturers of legacy chips, which is the ones that automotive uses, and I think the primary supplier for Ford's chips was Renesas. Renesas caught on fire in March of 2020.
Yeah.
They weren't even running again until like months and months later, several months later that they were running. They're still not at 100% capacity. You know why? Because the machines they use to make the chips use legacy chips, which they make. So it's, that put us in a big spot where nobody can get the chips they need to even make more chips, right?
Right.
And automakers went from having, historically like an 80-day supply. Let me tell you what day supply is. It's the way the automaker determines. So if you've got a certain day supply of a particular model, how long, if they stopped sending out that model, how long the dealer body would have those models available for sale, right? So manufacturer stops delivering Malibus and you got an 80-day supply. That means 80 days later, there will be no more Malibus, right? Most models were at 80-day supply. That's where they wanted to be. It also went down to about 10-day supply, which is staggeringly low, right? Bad. We're just now back up, at an average to 35-day supply. There's some manufacturers that are way below that. Most of the domestics have managed to get above that, with, some of the highest being like Fiat, Chrysler Group. They've got a really good day supply, but you also have to keep in mind, how many of those they're actually selling. Right? That goes into the day supply thing too. If you're selling more of them, you're going to have a lower day supply because they're in demand. But yeah, so that's, what are they going to do?
Yeah. What short-term action is going to be applied? Now, automakers halted production on their lower demanded vehicles like your sedans or your lower trim level trucks. Now, they didn't just stop making, vehicles. They would park them in holding lots. So the videos that you would see on social media of, people driving past in the stadiums, of trucks parked all along, that's accurate.
Oh yeah, that's the real deal. Some of them even, they ran out of places that they could rent or lease to park unfinished vehicles. And they said, well, why don't we send them to the dealer? So some of them even started sending like inoperable unfinished vehicles to the dealer to hold until they could retrofit it with modules. Other manufacturers went a little different way about it. They omitted some features. They said, okay, let's leave off what will save us 5 modules. Okay, let's leave off stuff people, don't really need anyhow, like heated rear seats. Okay, let's omit that. few other things, auto start stop. Some people don't really like that anyhow, everybody. And so they're like, well, let's send them out without that. Okay, no harm, no foul. Everybody's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the features they said they'd retrofit later, like their heated and cooled front seats, heated steering wheel, front and rear park assist. They're like, okay, we'll make the car, we'll put the stuff in it, as in the heating pads, the buttons to make it operate, but the module, the brain that makes it all work. Yeah, we're not going to put that in there yet. Customer can drive the car for however long, 6-8 months is kind of what they're saying. We haven't had anything retrofitted yet, but they promise that that's coming up. They'll come into the dealer and get them retrofitted. So, with that stuff in mind, that's just some of the concessions that they've made to try and keep production going while going through a major shortage of certain components.
So when will things get back to normal? They're saying, late 2022. Experts are saying, late 2022, 2023 before we'll see, pre-pandemic inventory levels. But, chip makers are saying that, just to meet the current demand, it could be a year or two or beyond. They're not real sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen some improvements with vehicle deliveries, but it's still not consistent. Most of them are still just kind of trickling in. When things do come in higher quantities, though, they're pre-sold, the vast majority of them. Mm-hmm. And it's that way across the board with all types of different manufacturers. And most of the stuff that's coming in isn't just going on the lot and getting sold that day. It's sold weeks. I mean, before it even got a VIN number and got manufactured, they knew the order was going to go through. So it's pre-sold then. So that's where a lot of the vehicles that are being produced now are going. They're already sold.
Well, that's just to not really get off track here, but went through in our website showed that we had 50 some vehicles in stock or in transit. Mm-hmm. And I went and counted the actual touch the vehicles that we had, and we had 11 of those. And then the ones that were coming in, we had, I think it was 22 that were actually sold already, that were already spoken for. So that just tells you that when someone says, hey, that vehicle's already sold, or hey, if this is available, but really quickly, we better, figure out if you're going to take this or not. It's not a sales tactic. It's true right now.
It's kind of biting the sales tactics of the past in the butt. Like, well, you got to act now. This thing could be gone. Well, I don't know. Like 5 years ago, that was somewhat less valid than it is now, because right now it probably will be gone. And potentially, I don't want to make it sound like crazy, or it could be gone that day.
Yeah.
If it's a new car, you might not want to hang up the phone from that conversation, because somebody else will probably be calling.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's always been time is of the essence type of deal with buying a car, selling a car, anything like that. But now it's like, really, I mean, we don't want you to miss out on it, because that hurts us too. You didn't get a car at all.
Yeah.
So you got to have your wits about you to car shop these days.
Yep. It's true. So automakers right now are looking at, redesigning the way that chips are made, for the parts. So it doesn't take so many chips to make up one component. Mm-hmm. Automakers are also revamping their just-in-time approach. So, I think you had went over it in the beginning, where instead of waiting for the order to come in and then maybe we can figure out how to have maybe a little bit of
but something
inventory.
In the warehouse, right?
Yeah. Then that can maybe go across different vehicles, not just for one vehicle, one part, so forth. Some
more cross compatibility. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be a pretty big game changer, I think, for the manufacturers if they they're going towards this, but there's still
it's up in the air. And I know recently we had a bill pass through the House of Representatives, $52 billion for R&D, which I had to ask, what is R&D, which is research and development of the chip production, chip manufacturing. And Intel had announced that they are putting a large plant in Ohio. Mm-hmm. It was Albany. No, that was Albany Tech. I don't know. Anyway, somewhere
New Albany, Ohio.
Okay. In Ohio. And then also Texas. There's going to be some chips manufacturers down in there.
I don't know who's making those or what manufacturers do those.
Alan didn't give me those notes, so I'm not sure about that.
We know it's in Taylor, Texas, though.
Yeah.
We're not sure of the manufacturer, but we can look that up later in another episode.
Yeah. But anyways, so that will hopefully entice other chip manufacturers to build in the U.S. as well.
Yeah, and another good thing about it through this whole it's with being a global automotive manufacturer, it's still a learning process, right?
Yes,
always, every day is a learning process in modern day. And right now, they're learning that they maybe need to secure contracts from multiple manufacturers just in case one has a fire or one has a major shortage, or you're at the bottom of the list. So you really need to get a company that just wants to make your chips. There's a lot to go into it. And there's a lot that's far above, my head. But you can kind of look at it and come up with some ideas, and at least understanding it's a little more, useful when you realize that auto manufacturers use a different kind of chip. They call it a legacy chip. It's more tried and true. It's tested and vetted in a lot different environments than, say, the one that's in your iPhone, which is like the newest, hottest, latest, highest profit chip for the manufacturers to make. So, but they don't work, the same. They're not as potentially durable, just not as much tried and true time to them. When automotive manufacturer makes a car, they make it for a 5 or several year run. And when a manufacturer makes a chip for a cell phone, it's just got to be good for like that year, because the technology is going to go on to the next G here anytime. And guess what? Pitch all the rest and, get ready
Make
for
the best.
the next one. Yeah. And you can't really do that with automotive manufacturing, but they're going to have to figure out a way to. And it could be more modular stuff, cross compatibility. And it could be, just reducing the number of chips that it takes to make stuff, or moving on to the newer style and coming up with a way for it to adhere to the standards we're used to for durability and things like that, even though it's a brand new chip maze. They've got to figure some stuff out, basically, right? I don't have all the answers, but you can kind of look at it and realize it's not as easy as it seems.
Yeah. No. I've learned a lot through this.
Oh my
gosh. Going through.
Tons.
But you know what I just came up with?
What?
Well, you did, but pitch the rest, make the best.
Pitch the rest, make the best.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, they'll get to that at some point, I'm sure, in their multi-billion-dollar industry of pitching stuff, and because they've done it before. So, give them time. They'll all make, I think it'll come down to like platforms for manufacturers that they put multiple different vehicle bodies on one chassis.
Sure.
So that makes it so they have to use one style of chip for 5 different cars, right? One style of module, one, basic, it's Ultium platform, I think is what GM's calling it. Yeah, they're doing Ultium. It's going to be the electric platform. It's going to be for multiple models. That's going to help, right?
You would think.
Even though an electric vehicle uses twice as many electronic components, at least if it's spread out like that, you can't not make the Silverado, but make the Tahoe, because there'll be shared platforms for stuff in the future.
You would think so.
Yeah.
You would think. Well, obviously it'll be some time before WK or any other dealership sees, a huge inventory, level rise. But, if you're in that situation where, you're needing to do something, so your lease, is coming due soon. There's options, or in an event that you need to downsize, your vehicle, gas prices. Yeah. Or your family's growing, so you need a bigger, bigger vehicle, or repairs, the vehicle that you currently have, you've had for, how long have you had your vehicle?
72 years,
yeah,
Alan.
Yeah.
Long time.
And, repairs are coming along that you may have been recommended, and you may not be doing
if
them.
If you're almost afoot, like if literally what you have is so unreliable that you might be better off walking. Well, we've come up with a few things that could be helpful to you. And it could also be like your business. A lot of small businesses are growing, as they tend to do.
Yeah. Especially right now.
Yeah.
some are like
Get-
just through the roof.
Get you an HVAC business. What do you
Yep.
need? You need a van.
Van.
What's
Yep.
really hard to get?
A van.
A van.
Yeah.
So
But there's still options available,
Yeah.
and we'll go over some of, over what options that you have available.
yeah,
So
you
don't
gotta know.
don't
Yeah.
think that you're just, oh, I got to wait this out, and
No,
I'm
we
just
could
going to
get
have to
some-
stay with this vehicle. I mean, we've been trying, we don't mean to keep bringing Alan up, but we've been trying to get Alan out of his truck for a while now. And he's just waiting. So if you are walking and you see this silver fox guy, with silver hair walking down the
He'll
side,
be real sweaty if he's walking, but
he works at WK. Will you bring him?
Yes. Just bring him here. He needs to get here. His truck broke down.
But don't think that, you're just left to the side and, you need to wait till this is over, because you're just like us. We're, you have to think outside the box.
Yeah.
So, but that's the show. I
Yeah.
mean, guys, if you found this, at all informative, or even a little entertaining, I know we pick on Alan, but if you found this entertaining, please, give us a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe, and we'll cruise on by and pick you up next week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
This has been a WK Burnouts production.